No empire lasts forever. The Dutch, the British, and even the Romans all eventually fell. And now it seems we have another to add to the list. For almost a century, the American empire has enjoyed total dominance on the world stage. But recently, cracks are beginning to show, and they're widening fast. The country is more divided than ever. People are destroying cities, government debt continues to pile up, and decades of globalization are being unpicked right in front of our eyes.
Take a look at the scene behind me. This intersection here in Compton has been the scene of several street takeovers, so it is a hotspot for activity. We've seen continual fireworks going off. The police chopper is overhead. Now President Trump says he is sending the National Guard to this region.
The American dream that generations worked to build is starting to fade, replaced by fear, frustration, and the feeling that everything is breaking apart. There's a growing sense that the rules no longer apply, and when that happens, chaos ensues. Welcome to Peak Visibility, where we're going to tell the story of how countries like America and China use power, even when we can't always see it. America used to be the biggest and strongest country in the world, but now that's starting to change. This isn't just about one leader. It's about what happens when an empire starts to believe in its own invincibility, long after the foundations have started to crack. The question isn't just about Trump. It's about whether America has crossed the point of no return. The infighting has already begun, but can the American world order survive? Or are we already watching the opening act of a new global empire? The answer lies deeper than most think, and begins years before today. In 1945, the world had been through a terrible war. Many countries were broken and hurting, but one country stayed safe and grew even stronger. The United States didn't just survive the war. It emerged from it as the leader of a new world order.
It is a solemn but glorious hour. I wish that Franklin D. Roosevelt had lived to see this day. General Eisenhower informs me that the forces of Germany have surrendered to the United Nations. The flags of freedom fly all over Europe.
After the war, while other places in Europe and Asia worked to fix what was broken, America used this moment to change the rules of the world. In the span of just a few years, under the leadership of Presidents Roosevelt and Truman, the United States reshaped the global system, creating new plans for money, peace, and rebuilding. They started things like the United Nations, where countries come together to talk instead of fight, and the Marshall Plan, which helped fix Europe but made it more like America. There became a new world order, with the US at the center. One big example was NATO, a team made so America could protect Europe from another war and make sure Europe followed America's way of doing things. Because of NATO, American soldiers got bases all over Europe, in places like Germany, Italy, and Turkey, but no European soldiers had bases in America.
On this historic occasion, I am happy to welcome the foreign ministers of the countries which, together with the United States, form the North Atlantic Community of Nations. The purpose of this meeting is to take the first step toward putting into effect an international agreement to safeguard the peace and prosperity of this community of nations.
But America didn't just show its power with war. It also spread its influence through movies, music, food, fashion, and technology. In the second half of the 20th century, American culture became something people all over the world wanted to see and be part of. Hollywood movies filled theaters in Europe and Japan. In the 90s and 2000s, big tech companies like Apple, Microsoft, Facebook, and Google started changing how we live.
I don't think anyone at the company's in it for the money. It's a much more exciting field than trying to measure exactly how much we're selling or how much it's worth. The creation of these programs is something you can sit down and see people enjoying and solving real problems.
And on a quiet strip of land in California, this became the center for it all. Silicon Valley became the heart of the new tech world. These companies didn't just sell products. They carried American ideas inside them, ideas like free speech, capitalism, and using data to make everything smarter. Even countries that didn't like American politics still used iPhones, Google, YouTube, and Facebook every day. In many ways, the world became Americanized, not by war, but by code. But memories don't last forever. And while America built its empire on ideals, culture, and money, another country was quietly rising. A country that watched, learned, and adapted, ready to challenge the rules America wrote.
Seeing a new form of nationalism, you are seeing a new, specifically anti-Western and anti-American nationalism, whether it's regard to cyber theft and cybercrime, cyber attacks, the way Western companies are treated, the business in the South China Seas where China is doing what apparently violates international law and is worrying its neighbors. Yeah. Is it time to get tougher on China?
For years, China lived in the shadows, quiet, overlooked, and closed off from the world. But during the 70s, something changed, and China started transforming itself from a closed society to a manufacturing powerhouse. With millions of workers and low costs, China became the perfect place for factories to flourish, and flourish they did. Chinese goods started to flood global markets. From electronics to clothing, toys, and machinery, China became the world's factory, producing the goods that filled store shelves worldwide with "Made in China." Big American brands like Apple and Nike rushed in, chasing lower manufacturing costs. Not only did this lower prices for people all around the world, but also increased the dependence on China for essential products. But China wasn't just building products, it was building power. Roads, ports, railways, entire cities, all created to fuel its rise. And then came the Belt and Road Initiative, a global plan to connect continents through Chinese-built infrastructure. One by one, countries joined in, tied to China through debt, trade, and steel. And it positioned China as a hub in the new global economy, not just a link in the United States chain. China became a key player, not only in production, but also in shaping international commerce rules. The world's manufacturing heartbeat now pulses strongly in China, marking a dramatic shift in global power. But as China rose, America started to crack. The empire that once stood unshaken was beginning to falter from within.
Culminating in a protester standoff with LAPD officers lining up downtown, facing off against demonstrators after authorities ordered crowds to disperse around nightfall. Police there declaring an unlawful assembly, ordering about 200 protesters to break up at about 7 with the use of less lethal munitions authorized after officials say a smaller, more violent group started throwing pieces of concrete at officers.
The fall of every great empire begins with the same mistake, believing it can never fall. For America, the slow collapse didn't come from an outside invasion. It came quietly, from within, through a slow, painful process called deindustrialization. The very industries that built the backbone of the nation, steel, cars, machines, tech, began to vanish. These weren't just jobs, they were identities. They were promises of a stable life, of dignity, of the American dream. But when globalization offered cheaper labor overseas, factories didn't hesitate. Entire industries were hollowed out, and the towns built around them, forgotten. In the span of a generation, the US went from being the world's workshop to a consumer economy, dependent on importing goods it used to make itself. And while the factories moved east, so did the future. Because the nation that controls the means of production controls the balance of power, and America gave that away. And when a nation's economic engine stalls, people start looking for someone to blame. What followed was division. The loss of industry didn't just take away jobs, it took away identity. Working-class Americans felt abandoned, while elites in booming coastal cities seemed to thrive. The gap between two Americas grew wider, not just in wealth, but in culture, values, and truth itself. Politics became war, neighbors became enemies, and trusting government, media, and even democracy itself began to collapse. Protest, destruction, and unrest rained down on cities. What used to be civil disagreement turned into cultural warfare, fueled by outrage, social media, and an ecosystem that profits from division. Leaders stopped solving problems and started blaming each other, chasing short-term wins while the country fell into long-term decay. Democracy, once America's proudest export, starts to begin to look fragile at home. Conspiracy theories replaced facts, and the Constitution became a battleground instead of a blueprint. And while the world watches America fall, another power continues to rise that's more focused, more unified, and more prepared to lead in a new global order. It's the natural cycle of history, because no empire lasts forever. The Dutch thought they'd reign forever. The British did too. So did the Romans. Now it's America's turn to face the mirror. The question isn't whether America will fall, it's whether we're already watching it happen.